everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing another video. And it's a familiar subject to my other previous videos regarding this, and it also bears similarity to my dangers of being anti-SJW video in some ways as well. So this time I'm going to cover the idea that, as controversial as this is to, and contradictory as to previous videos I've done, is that there is a problem with some of what the anti-feminist commentators or whatnot have said. And I've noticed this trend amongst a lot of people I watch and are used to watch. You know, there's some people that I've stopped watching because, to be quite honest, they've kind of gone, they drank this Kool-Aid. They've gone so far, and they kind of, I'm just saying that they've gone down this rabbit hole that I predicted in my video years ago about the anti-SJW people. And some people have remained reasonable, in my opinion. You know, like, for example, TJ Kirk is one of them that he's remained consistent, you know, because he's not a hypocrite about a lot of the stuff he used to say or have said. He's remained consistent. There's other people too, but I just wanted to give that as an example of someone that I think has really stood out and didn't go too far in one direction, because I think there's a few people that kind of just drank the Trump Kool-Aid, for example, and they've gone like halfway to becoming a big Trump supporter or something. And they used to be, they might have been liberal at one time. I'm not going to say who these certain people that I'm regarding in this comment, but I think that's happened to a few people. And I think that's kind of sad, because all critical thought has gone out the window as far as on that subject. So what do I have to say about anti-feminism? Well, one of the most common things that I see people say is like, well, women in the West don't need feminism, blah, blah, blah. You know, women are more privileged in the West or United States, you know. Oh, what about Islam? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that is one thing that people say. They have some good points at times. As far as the Islam thing, there's just way too much focus on Islam itself and not the background of why so many countries are like into radical Islam. And a lot of that's United States foreign policy and how we do things around the world. And I'm not even talking about like from the Chomsky kind of perspective, like, you know, if your family gets bombed, so you vow revenge against the West. I don't even mean that. I mean, the regimes that we propped up, the United States, over the years have been radical Islamicist regimes like Saudi Arabia and elsewhere. So with that, you know, or we've created a vacuum, like in Afghanistan, there was a vacuum after the Soviets left, and that got taken over by them, the radical Islamicists. So it's a more complicated subject that either the left or the far right want to tackle. Not the left, mainly the progressive left, or not the progressive, the mainstream left wants to tackle. The corporate Democrats that support Saudi Arabia, like Hillary Clinton and all that. I'm not going to go into that bullshit today. So anyways, what is the problem with being anti-feminist? There is not I guess I would consider myself an anti-feminist because I'm against academic feminism or academic feminist ideas, like social constructionism is one of them. It's not that all feminists believe everything's socially constructed, but they place such an emphasis on it, implicitly seem biased towards that conclusion in a lot of their arguments. So that's one thing that bothers me about feminism. You know, I've gone over this numerous times. Patriarchy theory, as I said, I believe there is a patriarchy to some extent, but they implicitly they imply that it's this almost like conspiratorial kind of thing, the way that a lot of feminists talk about it. So that's the problem I have with that. And obviously objectification. I like women that are attractive. If looking at them is in a sexual way is objectification, then I'm guilty. So whatever, throw that out. That's just complete nonsense anyways. I mean, there are certain circumstances or instances where people do get objectified in a bad way, but I think everybody, like someone said once, everybody objectifies everybody to some extent. You know, a person calls me at my job, they think I'm just some fucking like drone object, you know, that they want their cell phone bill paid on a certain date, and I'm the object, the subject, not the subject, the object that they're manipulating. So everybody objectifies to some extent. It's just normal part of life. Doesn't mean we can't talk about it, but the way that a lot of feminists push that theory is flawed. So getting that out of the way, there's another factor in this debate and argument that a lot of these anti-feminists just miss out on this. So when they say the West is perfect, women are privileged in the West, blah blah blah. So the Christian right, and this is where it comes down to, what it comes down to, is the Christian right is very prevalent in certain parts of the United States, and they, to be blunt, they have very sexist, antiquated attitudes towards women. I mean, there's no denying that. I mean, whether or not you want to blame religion or you want to blame, you know, sexism that's because of religion, or maybe it leads them to become more religious in a certain way, that is a big part of Christianity, is sexist attitudes. And that's why you have these strongholds of, you know, basically people just believe in the biblical values that they were brought up with. They're, just to be blunt, sexist. And, you know, whether or not you believe pro-life versus pro-choice, I mean, I happen to be pro-choice, but if you think that that is part of sexism or not, that's up to you. But the way that they talk about women, a lot of people that are pro-life, they're definitely sexist. So I think that's something that they miss, a lot of the anti-feminists, when they make these arguments against feminism. Now, it doesn't mean that feminism is some great paragon of ideal thinking or anything like that. On the contrary, like I said, I think there's a lot of problems with it, and that's why I don't consider myself a feminist. I mean, I guess you'd call me an anti-feminist, or an anti-SJW or whatever, because I think a lot of that shit is just crazy nowadays. I mean, or it's been presented in a way that doesn't articulate the nuance within its own belief system. So when people have these debates online, it's because of some clickbait article that says, all men mansplaining, blah, 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 blah. And the woman that's writing the article may not even believe in the headline that's used for the clickbait headline. So that's the problem, is that the sensationalist culture and society that we live in nowadays is getting worse and worse. So people lose the nuance. So people go to this far left or far right, if you really want to consider it that. I don't know if I would consider it in a certain way. It's just this reactionary kind of thing from both the left and the right. So that's the problem. And I think we have to acknowledge that feminists might have a point to some extent, even about the West, even about the United States particularly, because whether or not you believe feminism is the vehicle to fight some of these things, there is inequality in certain parts of the United States. There's undoubtedly attitudes and behaviors, you know, that are not good. You know, I mean, it might be in rural areas that people believe in this stuff, or the South or whatever, but it's obviously, you know, there's the white feminist thing, which is true. I mean, there's this stereotype of this white feminist that goes to college and has all these opportunities and doesn't really know that they're privileged. And that's something that you can attack, obviously. But there's also people in, you know, maybe they're in like North Carolina or Alabama. They're a woman growing up and they're treated like shit and nobody believes their story of abuse or assault, or, you know, they have to have an abortion, they can't do it, you know, or they're in an abusive relationship and their families just laughs about it because they're just taught to be Christian or whatever about it, or some bullshit. So that's my whole point with this video, is that that's something that the anti-feminists don't talk about that much, and they should. If they want to acknowledge everything, we have to acknowledge some of that stuff, because that is definitely a problem. So it doesn't mean that feminism, as I said before, is the vehicle, at least third wave, politically correct feminism isn't the way to fight some of that stuff, but it does exist, which means their argument that women are totally equal in America is not correct. At least, maybe by law, but at least, in certain parts of the United States, it's definitely not true. So that's all I wanted to say in this video. Please comment and do whatever, and please subscribe.